Delmarva Today with Don Rush.
There were some big wins for the Salisbury University sports teams. The Millsboro Police Department has put an officer on administrative leave over a drug scandal. We'll have an exclusive interview with Jack Heath, the mayor of Salisbury. Welcome to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush. For our weekly roundup in studio is Greg Bassett, editor and general manager for the Salisbury Independent. And on the phone, Susan Canfor, reporter for Coastal Point and a contributor to the Salisbury Independent. Welcome to the program.
Hey, Don.
Hi, Don.
So, Greg, I want to start with you. Big news, really, sports-wise, when it came to Salisbury University, particularly for the men's lacrosse team.
Yes, on Sunday they won their 13th national championship. Just pretty amazing that Salisbury University has continued such great play under Coach Jim Berkman for so many years. They beat Tufts, who was the number one team in the country in Division III, which Salisbury plays in. They played up in Philadelphia, where the big NCAA lacrosse tournament was. A lot of local people went up there. Finished the season 23-1, and they beat Tufts 17-12. They got out to a big early lead. Tufts sort of came back and scared us all, and in the end, Salisbury put it away. Great game, great season for these guys.
They've been a powerhouse for a long time here in lacrosse.
They really have, and it's just incredible. You can really get caught up in the frenzy of Salisbury University lacrosse, and you know the machine that Berkman has. We're so lucky to have had him for so many years. He could have picked his assignment anywhere in the country, and he chooses to be here, and it's just such a great feather for Salisbury. And lacrosse is just one of those sports that it instills so much discipline in kids. Many of our kids, I grew up in Salisbury. It was a tennis town. Then we all play tennis. Now people play lacrosse like crazy, and it really is a lacrosse haven here in Salisbury.
What do you think sparked this kind of interest? I mean, when I came here, lacrosse was not a particularly big thing from where at least I came, but particularly here on the shore, it seems like a really big event.
Yeah, I think just winning. It's just they win a lot. And, the other thing is the kids get into it at an early age. My kids played lacrosse. My daughter was a goalie at Bennett for a long time. There's nothing like being a parent of a goalie. But really, even now she's in school, and when she's struggling, I'll say to her, remember when you had all those blocks against Stephen Decatur? And it brings out something in her. It really does build character. And Berkman is just on the top of a program. So many of these great guys. There is some professional lacrosse, but it's not really what they aspire to. It's something that they do, like kind of men being men and women being women on the lacrosse field. Just a great sport and great local support. They lost a game early in the year. They lost to Christopher Newport early, and it seemed like, okay, this is not going to be the year. And then they won every game after that. They won 21 games after that. So, just a tremendous season.
As someone who had a child who was a goalie, any anxiety at times when you see that?
Yes, there can be, because people have good and bad days, and goalies have good and bad days. But certainly when my daughter was in the goal, people could tell that she was trying hard, so the other parents didn't get on me too bad.
We also had some success, baseball, softball. What's going on there?
Yes, the SU baseball team. The men are actually right now in the finals of the Division III, and they play today, Friday, at 5:30 this evening. And they are playing Texas Baptist down in Texas. And then the women's softball team, they are in Marshall, Texas this weekend, and they will be playing Moravian, Pennsylvania. They are 44-3 this year, the women's softball team, and it looks like they're both teams, men and women, are positioned to win the national championship. So we'll see what happens. For SU to have 3 national champions in the spring sports would be just awesome.
What's been a record in terms of softball and baseball for the university?
I don't know the baseball total record for the year, but like I said, softball is 44-3. I think the men have lost like 6 games, if that many, but really another good team. And they've peaked again. They're one of those teams that have peaked at the right time of year.
Now, I want to turn to you, Susan, because we have, of course, the situation with a Millsboro police officer and a drug scandal. What can you tell us about that?
Yes, Don, a 34-year-old police officer in Millsboro who was named Officer of the Year in 2016. Was surprisingly indicted by the Department of Justice's Division of Civil Rights and Public Trust. He was charged with tampering and using drugs stored in the police department's evidence closet. Sergeant Matthew Dufour, whose father is a chaplain at the police department, and who I went on a ride with, and who took me around town and showed me the ropes, so to speak, of a typical day in a police officer's life, and who was such a gentleman and so easy to talk to. He was charged with second-degree forgery, offering a false instrument for filing, 4 counts of obtaining controlled substances by theft, and official misconduct. He's on administrative leave, and he faces up to 27 years in prison. Sergeant Dufour was the evidence custodian for the police department, and on the morning of February 19th, he was discovered in his marked car in the parking lot of the police department unresponsive. He was in respiratory distress, and he was exhibiting other signs of overdose. Some of the other Millsboro police officers rushed to him and gave him CPR and used Narcan. He was taken to the hospital for further treatment. Fentanyl, oxycodone, and cocaine were all found in his system, and that's according to a news release that we got from the DOJ. 2 days later, oxycodone pills were found in his police vehicle. Both the Delaware State Police and the Millsboro Town Police investigated, and they reported what happened to the DOJ. The Millsboro Police Chief, Brian Calloway, couldn't comment because, of course, this is a personnel matter. But he stated in a news release that honor is the most important characteristic a police officer must uphold. Officers must always do the right thing, even when no one is watching, he said. I know Chief Calloway. He's a good guy. All the police officers really look up to him. He's a very honorable man. And when I read those words, Don, I could hear the disappointment and the sadness in his voice. He's certainly a man of high ideals. He sets a high standard for his officers. It's a sad situation, and we'll be watching it as it goes to trial and as it unfolds.
I mean, this must have been a real shock. I mean, given the fact that he won this medal on the one hand, and then the question is, how did it slip through on the other?
Well, he was the evidence coordinator, I think is what they called him, and he had total access to the drugs that were confiscated and that were in the evidence closet. So he found ways to initial other police officers' initials on the packages of drugs. So it looked like they were also being looked at by another party. So it didn't look like he was the only one. I guess he was able to just take enough. And from what I understand from the press release, he only took drugs from the drugs that were ready to be destroyed, that had already been, examined by the officials and were ready to be destroyed. So I guess he thought they wouldn't be missed. But I tell you, I know him, and I know his father, and to meet the family, just a lovely family. The father has been a pastor, and he's the chaplain. He would never guess in a million years that anything like this could happen. So yes, it was quite a shock to the community and to the police department, and certainly the Chief Calloway. Quite a shock in the community. I don't think anybody ever would have expected this of Sergeant Dufour.
Has there been any reactionary comment from the family themselves? Or is it?
I have not heard anything from the family.
No.
He has a wife and he has 2 little children, who I'm sure they'll probably try to keep from that because they're in school and kids can be cruel, if they hear things like this. So I have not heard anything from the family, no, and I haven't talked to his father. But they really can't comment because it's still, it's still under investigation. They haven't had the trial yet. But I'm sure they're upset. I'm sure everybody certainly wishes him well. And he did survive, luckily. And the family is a well-respected family in the community, so certainly wish them well. But it's a sad situation when these things happen. Certainly, my gosh, what a surprise.
Do we expect, by the way, any revisions as to how these things are handled then?
And I haven't heard yet. My understanding is that is being looked at and investigated, but I haven't heard yet exactly how they'll revise it. But I'm sure they will. I'm sure there'll be more control over it in the future. And I also know that the Millsboro Police Department is hiring 2 more officers. Part of that is because the town is growing so quickly, and they need the officers to patrol. But I think probably there'll be much more control over that evidence closet in the future.
Great. I want to turn to maybe a little more mundane issue, which is Camden and South Boulevard and removal of a signal there. What's going on, and how does that come about?
You say mundane, Don, but I don't remember an issue lately that has gotten more attention than the rumble strips and the intersection at South Boulevard and Camden Avenue. What happened was there's always been a light there, and the cost for replacing the light is exorbitant. It's like north of $200,000 for a light there. So the city, in sort of the spirit of trying to keep traffic moving, decided to put a stop sign for people going east and west on South Boulevard, and Camden Street traffic would continue through. But there were some vision questions. They did a study, and the city has determined that study shows that it's completely safe just to have the 2 stop signs. But residents were concerned that wasn't going to be safe enough, that there was vision problems with 2 retaining walls for some houses on the corner, plus a hedge. that kept you from being able to look down Camden north and south to see if cars were coming. So they went ahead and put rumble strips in with the idea that that would slow the traffic going north and south on Camden. Tremendous negative feedback to the rumble strips. People bombarded the city council with complaints, and the rumble strips were pretty annoying. If you were in your car and you maybe had a drink in your hand, you were going to spill it because you would hit these rumble strips, and they really did disrupt your car. Plus, they were very loud. They made a noise, and the neighbors complained about the noise. So the rumble strips lasted all of, I think, 4 or 5 days before the city removed the rumble strips, and they've made it now a 4-way stop. So that's what they're going to proceed with, the 4-way stop. But it's one of those little neighborhood issues that really got everybody very excited. We had a headline in our paper. The headline I wrote was that city in a tizzy over Camden Avenue intersection. People who had complained about the intersection thought that I was demeaning their opinion by saying they were in a tizzy, that I wasn't taking them seriously. I just liked how city and tizzy sounded in a headline. But anyway, we seem to be moving on, but another a huge issue. And again, taking time away from our new mayor, and they're in a budget situation, and they've had to deal with this issue for 3 or 4 weeks now, and it's been quite tumultuous for them.
I mean, one of the things that strikes me about the Camden is Camden is a sort of a major thoroughfare of sorts in the back sort of neighborhood. I mean, this is not just a small side street.
Yeah, and there's some philosophy on this. So, one of the things is, it's a major thoroughfare, or you can look at it as a neighborhood street. So in reality, a lot of the through traffic should be out on Route 13, technically, in an engineering sense, and that should be a street for local traffic only. But it's not. It's a major north-south thoroughfare for people who don't want to be out on 13, and they do speed. I spent about half an hour standing there watching cars go into the rumble strip, and I was just shocked at how fast cars were going. It's a 30-mile-an-hour area. People were easily going 50 miles an hour when they were hitting those rumble strips. So it was very exciting to see them react to that, not paying attention, and suddenly in the middle of these rumble strips. But a lot of speed issues on that road. It seems like the 4-way stop sign is going to work. I went through there a couple times today just to sort of test it out. Felt good. And I think maybe they've got a solution.
This reminds me of the Isabella Street controversy night a few years ago. Same kind of issue where the usage of the highway changed as people try to move from east to west. Yeah,
and people went there and they picketed. They closed down the street. It was a huge issue. You would think I would have learned from that, and the city would have learned from that. And things have been rectified there with a 4-way stop where it was an issue in Newtown at Isabella Street, and that's what's going to happen here at Camden and South Boulevard.
And I want to turn to you, Susan, and we have an election coming up there in Millsboro. What's going on? A couple more candidates.
Yes, an election coming up in Millsboro. There's a city council election every year in Millsboro. But there have been years when no election was necessary because only the incumbents would run for election, and they would just be automatically put back in their seats and sworn in without fanfare. And sometimes it wouldn't even be announced. They would just swear them in at the next council meeting, and the public didn't even know there was an election. So they would be sworn in, like I said, without fanfare. But in recent years, some residents, especially those who are new to Millsboro, who are coming here with more modern ideas, I guess, have objected to the way the town has handled the elections. Many times in the past couple of years, there has not been an election, no announcement, no absentee voting was allowed. There were only limited hours that you could vote, always at town hall. So if you were working that day or you had a graduation or a wedding, you couldn't always get there to vote. But this year, 2 of the 3 incumbents running for election are being challenged. Matthew Davis, who's the vice president of Farmers Bank of Willards in Millsboro, is running against the mayor, Faye Lingo, and Marty Presley, who is a financial advisor, a private financial advisor with his own company. He's challenging the long-term councilman Larry Gum. I talked to Mr. Davis and Mr. Presley. Mr. Davis said he feels he can bring his skills to the council, especially since the town is growing so quickly, and the council is responsible, he said, for making important decisions that the council members never had to make in the past before all this growth. But Mr. Presley is adamant about making changes, and he especially wants to see things like the town's website upgraded and practices modernized. He said social media should be used, and the residents should be allowed to watch monthly meetings on Zoom or on another such platform and have access to recorded meetings. The third incumbent, Ron O'Neill, is running unopposed this year. The election is going to be on Saturday, June 10th, and I wouldn't be surprised, Dawn, to see some changes this year. Mr. Presley told me that the town gets away with only what it has to do, that it's required to do by state law. It does nothing more than that, and that includes updating the website. So I think we might see some changes this year when there is the election.
How big of an issue is something like development? I mean, when you saw the mayor, Lingo obviously, as a family anyway, is big into real estate. I don't know whether related or not, but nonetheless, development obviously is a key issue, particularly in that area.
No, she's not related to the Lingos in real estate, but you're right. Development is huge in Millsboro. It's just growing like crazy. New developments, and there's a huge development there called Plantation Lakes with section after section still being developed. There are apartments and townhouses. People are moving there, and businesses are opening on Route 113, north and south, like crazy. So development is a big issue, and some of these issues, frankly, some of the council members who have been on the council 20 years never had to face. Might not have seen, that some of the newcomers, maybe coming from a bigger town, might know a little more about that, and how to let a town grow with the proper, with all the proper restrictions in place. So that's what they're saying, and that's kind of the platform they're running on. Exactly what you said is the growth and the development is happening so fast, and they need some new blood. Plus, Brad Cordry, who was one of the longtime council members, he's only in his 30s, and he resigned in May because he moved out of his district. Not because of anything controversial, but now all of the council members are much older. So somebody like Matt Davis, who's in his 30s with 3 young children, would bring kind of fresh ideas to the council. So I think that's what some of the residents are hoping for, is some fresh blood on the council and some new ideas.
Because I know there's been some concern about development in the sense that particularly people who come there or have been there a long time, they're concerned that large swaths of the area will simply turn into houses and maybe next door, and where there was once trees and that sort of thing. I mean, it does seem to be an ongoing issue there.
It's happening right before our very eyes. There's a huge area just north of Millsboro. I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago. There's going to be a new Tidal Health campus with doctor's offices, and there's an adjoining residential community plan there with walkways around the pond and a preventive medicine there. That's going to all be built. That's near the cemetery just north of Millsboro. There's very little space on 113 now to build. There's Patriots Way Plaza is almost completely full. A new Aldi just opened there a couple weeks ago. New restaurants are coming in like crazy. Texas Roadhouse opened, Grotto Pizza, and all of the development seems to be on the highway. And there's also some concern about what might happen to that really, really quaint and kind of historic downtown area. A lot of those businesses have gone out now, have closed down, and there's concern about that too. So there's quite a bit that has to be looked at in Millsboro. And I think some fresh blood and new candidates would be a really good thing for that town.
Greg, I want to turn to you. The Salisbury Police Department adding some automated license plate readers to at least the patrol cars. Do we all have to be concerned?
Yeah, these tag readers are interesting, and I really need to do a bigger story on this because I learned just recently. I had a situation where my headlight had gone out. I had it repaired. I went by the state police barrack. The guy came out, said it was okay, but somehow the paperwork wasn't filed correctly. So I was going into Ocean City one day, and in Ocean City there are several cameras on the bridge, and they basically photograph every vehicle that comes in Ocean City and leaves Ocean City. And somehow it alerted the Ocean City police that I had a violation for not having my headlight fixed. Well, a police officer waited at 33rd Street, where Baltimore Avenue and Philadelphia Avenue kind of come together to form Coastal Highway, and pulled me over right there in front of the 33rd Street Plaza. And the officer was someone that I knew who grew up in Salisbury. He was a kid in Salisbury. And he told me, yeah, there's a camera and it saw you, and I just waited for you to come by. And I was like, wow, that's really Big Brotherish. I mean, it really is. And he's like, well, no, we've had this for a long time. Well, the same sort of thing is going to happen in Salisbury. I think there's 2 vehicles right now that have these tag readers, but because of a grant from the state police, pretty much every vehicle in the fleet is going to have a tag reader, and wherever they are, they'll be reading tags all day long. So they'll know where everyone is all the time. And if a vehicle is wanted, stolen, has an insurance flag, has, with me, a headlight flag, the officer will know right away and be able to take action. Very interesting how policing is changing so much.
I mean, it does seem as if there's an increase, I guess, in surveillance, and not just simply whether or not somebody's speeding or not speeding, because we've always had these speed cameras, but now they're digging into your personal files, as it were, in terms of who you are. I know you say that Ocean City's been doing it, but you could have some problem like a snafu that you had and not even know about it. I mean,
exactly. And I'd gotten it fixed. So the officer went, he went to, I said, look, and he's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. So he did something in the system to make me okay. But I was just like, wow, they are photographing the tag of every car that comes and goes from Ocean City. So they know pretty much where everybody is all the time.
I also, by the way, the ACLU filing a lawsuit. What's with that?
There's some concerns about it, but it's a predominant thing. A lot of things with Salisbury. When Salisbury gets these things, they're in place in other communities. Salisbury is usually the first to get these things, so people react. With the bike pass in town and the speed bumps and all kinds of other things. Other communities have had that. Certainly on the Western Shore, they come to Salisbury first, and within 10 years, everyone has the same thing. So it's going to be that way, but. There are some ACLU concerns if the police don't use it appropriately.
And finally, Susan, I want to turn to you. The VFW had a dedication sort of marking Memorial Day, as I understand it, in Ocean View. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, they did both. It was a busy Memorial Day weekend for the VFW. It's VFW Post 7234 in Ocean View. And on Monday morning, in a steady rain, the VFW members hosted the annual Memorial Day ceremony. It was a very nice ceremony with the honor guard and the playing of taps, a guest speaker and patriotic songs, and many dignitaries were in attendance. But everybody, including me, since I was there covering it for Coastal Point, was soaked to the absolute socks. Nobody left, though. Some people covered their heads with blankets, or they stood under awnings at some nearby businesses on the boardwalk. But on the stage at the VFW members and dignitaries sat in the driving rain on the bandstand, as did the audience who were on the benches, and waited and were very gracious and very patriotic and saluted the flag, sang the Star-Spangled Banner, and acted like the rain wasn't even there. And even though the words I was writing on my reporter's notebook were running right off the page, I stayed right there as well. And it was a very nice ceremony. It really was. But there were a lot of jokes about one of the VFW members promising the commander that it wouldn't rain until after 2 o'clock. But it did, and it did hard. But what you asked me about, Don, was the next day, Tuesday morning. It was windy, but it was a beautiful sunny morning with a blue sky. And on that morning, the VFW dedicated its new Memorial Park. And that park is located at the VFW on Marshy Hope Road in Ocean View. There are benches there at the Memorial Park and walkways and bricks and graves with the names of the ranks, the veterans, both living and dead. The park is a place to sit and to reflect, maybe smile at some memories or say a prayer. All of the flags of the branches of the military are there. And, of course, the United States flag flies above that Memorial Park. During the ceremony, VFW Commander John Gossard spoke eloquently about the park, saying it's a place of honor, it is a place of dignity, it is a place of respect and reflection. And he invited the audience to take a white carnation from a collection of them there at the dedication and walk up the walkway into the middle of the Memorial Park and lay a white carnation on the brick that they had engraved for their loved one. And as they did, as they walked to the center of that park, slowly making their way, Jennifer Carter, who's the VFW soloist, sang Amazing Grace, and it was just hauntingly beautiful. It was such a lovely service. And the new park is open for anyone who would like to visit it, Don.
We've been speaking with Greg Bassett. He's editor and general manager for the Salisbury Independent. And on the phones, Susan Canfor, reporter for Coastal Point and a contributor to the Salisbury Independent. Appreciate both of you stopping by and chatting with us this afternoon.
Thanks, Don.
Thanks, Don.
You're listening to Delmarva Today. This is Don Rush.
Delmarva Today with Don Rush.